The dinner rush had barely begun when the quiet little diner suddenly turned into a stage for something no one expected. Customers looked up from their plates as the young waitress stepped forward, her voice steady but her hands slightly trembling. She had just told the officers who stormed in that she was a billionaire, and the room fell into stunned silence. No one knew what to believe. To the people around her, she was just the hard-working woman who refilled coffee cups and remembered everyone's usual order. But tonight, her calm confidence felt different. As if she had been hiding a life no one could imagine. The cops exchanged doubtful looks, their tone sharp as they questioned her story, unaware that the truth carried more power than they realized. She didn't raise her voice or back down. She simply repeated her claim, her eyes hinting at a past she hadn't shared with anyone, not even her coworkers. Whispers spread through the diner, mixing curiosity with tension. Why would a billionaire work here? Why weren't the officers listening? And why did she seem completely unafraid? What no one knew, not the customers, not the officers, was that she wasn't just wealthy. She was the sister of a decorated general, and someone was about to find out the hard way. All eyes stayed locked on her as the officers continued pressing their questions, their voices growing firmer, though still within the bounds of what anyone might hear during a tense misunderstanding. She stood still behind the counter, the soft glow of the diner lights tracing the steady rise and fall of her breath. No one in the room understood why she remained so calm, especially when the officers clearly doubted every word she had spoken. But those who knew her, even a little often, sensed she carried something heavier than long shifts and tired nights. She never talked about her family, never mentioned where she came from, and always brushed off questions with a small smile. Coworkers assumed she preferred privacy. Customers thought she was just humble. No one imagined she came from a world far beyond the walls of this simple diner. As the tension grew, fragments of her hidden life flickered in her mind, the quiet halls of her childhood home, the strict discipline her brother lived by, and the countless moments when she wished she could escape the expectations that came with being related to someone so powerful. Working here had been her way of starting over, staying grounded, keeping things simple. But now, with the officers watching her every move and the entire diner frozen in suspense, she felt the quiet life she built slipping away. And someone in that room was moments from discovering the truth she never wanted to reveal. The diner grew even quieter as one of the officers stepped aside to speak with a customer who claimed he had seen her getting dropped off earlier that week in an old car. His words only added to the confusion. How could someone who called herself a billionaire live so simply? The officers looked back at her with new doubt, and the customers shifted uneasily in their seats, torn between curiosity and concern. No one dared to interrupt, but everyone could feel the weight of something bigger unfolding. Meanwhile, near the far booth, her coworker Miguel watched with worried eyes. He had always sensed she was hiding a story, but he assumed it was something painful, not something powerful. He wanted to step in, to say something, but he also knew the situation was too delicate. One wrong word could make everything worse. Still, he noticed the way her fingers lightly tapped against the counter, something she only did when she felt cornered. Outside, a delivery driver lingered by the windows, quietly observing the scene. He had seen her once making a hushed phone call behind the diner, mentioning someone named Commander. At the time, he brushed it off, thinking it was just a nickname or joke. Now it didn't feel funny at all. As the officers prepared to ask deeper questions, a low buzz came from her phone. One name flashed on the screen, one that changed everything for the few who happened to catch a glimpse. And before anyone could react, the tension inside the diner tightened like a held breath, waiting for something no one was prepared for. Her phone buzzed again, louder this time, cutting through the thick silence of the diner. She glanced down, her eyes narrowing as she saw the name flashing on the screen. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. Customers leaned slightly forward, sensing something beyond their understanding, while the officers shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or wait. Her fingers hovered over the counter, trembling just enough to betray the calm mask she wore. Miguel could barely keep his thoughts straight. He had worked alongside her for months and never suspected the truth. Yet now every secret glance, every carefully avoided story made sense. She wasn't just hiding money, she was hiding power, influence, and a family that could change the course of what was about to happen. The lead officer stepped closer, lowering his voice, trying to assert authority. "Ma'am, we need to know, are you serious about what you said?" His eyes flicked to her phone, noticing the name briefly. Something in his tone suggested he sensed the gravity of the call. She answered without looking up, her voice steady but firm. "Yes, I'm serious, and you don't know the half of it." Outside, the hum of traffic masked the sudden arrival of a black SUV pulling up at the curb. The tinted windows reflected the diner lights, hiding whoever or whatever was inside. Inside the diner, every heartbeat seemed louder, every glance sharper. Everyone felt it. Something unstoppable was about to step through the doors. And when it did, nothing would be the same. The black SUV's doors opened slowly, and a figure stepped out, silhouetted against the streetlights. The diner went completely silent. The officers stiffened, their hands instinctively moving toward their belts. But the woman behind the counter didn't flinch. Her eyes widened just slightly, not in fear, but in recognition. The figure walked in, tall and commanding, exuding a presence that made even the most skeptical customers inch back. "I see someone has been spreading stories," the voice said, calm but sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. The waitress straightened, her hand brushing lightly against the counter as if grounding herself. "Not spreading stories," she said, "just stating facts." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, now realizing they were in over their heads. Questions raced through their minds, but before they could speak, another twist hit. The newcomer reached into their coat and casually pulled out a badge. It wasn't just any badge, it was a federal identification, one that belonged to someone high up in military intelligence. Customers gasped quietly, whispers rising like a tide. Miguel's heart pounded as he realized that the world his coworker had been hiding from them was colliding with the world they thought they knew. The officers now faced a dilemma: enforce the law, or recognize that they were completely outmatched. And just as the tension reached its peak, her phone buzzed once more. Another name flashed, this time one that even the federal figure paused to notice. The diner held its collective breath, knowing that whatever happened next could change everything. And no one was ready for the consequences. The diner seemed to freeze in time as the federal officer's eyes met hers. "Lieutenant Gray?" he asked, voice tight with disbelief. The waitress straightened, finally allowing a small, controlled smile. "Yes," she said simply, and in that moment, every doubt in the room evaporated. The officers who had slammed her earlier felt their jaws tighten, realizing the gravity of their mistake. She wasn't just anyone claiming to be a billionaire. She was a decorated military officer, the sister of a respected general, and someone whose authority carried consequences far beyond their diner. The tension broke slightly as the officer spoke quietly into a radio, confirming her identity. Customers whispered among themselves, awe and fear mixing in their voices. Miguel felt a surge of pride and worry. He had worked alongside her without ever understanding the full weight of her life. Even the original officers lowered their heads, the weight of their assumptions hitting them. But just as relief began to settle, her phone buzzed one final time. She glanced at the screen and froze. Another name appeared, one she hadn't expected, a name connected to someone powerful, someone who had been quietly monitoring her every move, ready to turn this revelation into something far bigger. She looked up, her calm mask returning, but her eyes were sharper, colder. The diner had survived the first storm, but the real game was only beginning. Everyone inside had just become part of it. The tension in the diner slowly began to ease as the officers stepped back, finally recognizing the truth they had doubted. Apologies were quietly mumbled, but she barely acknowledged them, her focus already shifting to the next challenge. Miguel exhaled, realizing that the woman he had known as a quiet, hard-working waitress was capable of far more than he had ever imagined. Customers returned to their meals. Though whispers of awe and curiosity lingered in the air, she took a deep breath and addressed the diner, her voice calm but carrying authority. "I came here to live a simple life, to be part of a community without the weight of my family's influence. Tonight proved that even when you try to hide, the world has a way of finding you." Her words resonated with everyone who had watched in shock and disbelief. The federal officer handed her a discreet envelope, a reminder that even with this chapter closing, her responsibilities remained. She smiled faintly at Miguel and the staff, promising that life here could continue, but end